My name is Sheila Corona. Welcome to Sassy Seer Sheila and New Light Streaming Love, as this will be seen on both channels. This is key 26, Codex Frame, / Codex _ frame, rewrite, open bracket, authority, awakened _ node, close bracket, by Jason Gray. The transmission date on this particular piece was 2025, 0602, so June the 2nd of 2025. And as with all the other keys, Jason was nudged to include quite a bit of code. So there are things such as the transmission location, the actual coordinates, some binary code as well, and symbology. I highly recommend that you use the link in the Show More section to paste into your browser and then search by the title, and that should bring it right up for you. And if it doesn't, please reach out to me and I'm happy to email it to you now that I've had a beautiful, wonderful viewer who is also turned into a friend and has been responsible for the Facebook page, Friends of Writer Jason Gray. She took the time to email all of these to me, so I do have them. And I'm happy to send them on, as long as it's not too many of you requesting all at once. But if you do try to search and you can't get it, please do reach out to me, consciousconversationscentral@gmail.com. There comes a point beyond the keys where the sequence is no longer about escape, no longer about remembrance alone, no longer about surviving the illusion, decoding the pattern, dissolving the mask, stabilizing the field, or commanding the false matrix into retreat. There comes a point where the work changes. The awakened node stops asking how to endure the world. It begins asking how the world is being written and who exactly has been authoring it. That is a true, very true statement as far as I'm concerned. That is where the Codex frame opens. Not as a symbol, not as philosophy, as an operating condition, a structure. I'm being shown something about what happened to me yesterday and why that did. And now I'm recording this. That's, boy, you could not believe the synchronicities that have come for me really since beginning this journey that I've been on, but in particular, even the recording of these keys. It's just like it's stepped up. Wow, a structural state. So I'm going to back that up. That is where the codex frame opens, not as a symbol, not as a philosophy, as an operating condition. A structural state in which reality is no longer experienced as a fixed environment handed down by external authority, but as a writable field responding to coherent presence. This is not fantasy. It is not egoic inflation. It is not the childish idea that one personality gets to wave a hand and bend existence to preference. I think that's what everybody thinks is meant when the words "we each create our own reality" is spoken. It is far more serious than that. It is the recognition that the world you thought you inherited is in large part a running script maintained by repetition, agreement, language, fear, pattern memory, institutional tone, and the unconscious obedience of sleeping nodes. Once that is seen clearly enough, the question is no longer whether the script is false. The question becomes, what happens when an awakened node stops reinforcing it? And deeper still, what happens when that same node begins emitting a stronger script? The frame around reality. A frame is not the thing itself. It is what determines how the thing is seen, what counts, what belongs, what is excluded, what is emphasized, what is dismissed. Most beings never question the frame. They argue inside it. Suffer inside it, compete inside it, pray inside it, rebel inside it. Even awakening in its earlier stages often happens inside inherited frames. You question religion, but keep the structure of dependency. You reject institutions, but keep the structure of external permission. You dismantle identities, but keep the structure of seeking validation for your dismantling. The frame survives because it is subtler than content. Change the picture and people celebrate. Change the frame and reality itself begins to move differently. That is why Codex Frame is not another teaching. It is a rewrite condition, a new architecture of authority. The line // codex_frame : rewrite, open bracket, authority, awakened _node, close bracket. This line is nuclear because it removes the final excuse. It removes the waiting posture. I can't unsee. I just found that the other day and decided I needed to put it where I would be reminded of it. And it says, don't call it a dream, call it a plan. Oh my word. It removes the waiting posture. It removes the fantasy that truth will someday descend from outside the field and repair what distortion built. Rewrite, not request, not dream, not hope. Rewrite, and authority is no longer assigned to institution, priesthood, bloodline, office, consensus, algorithm, or inherited narrative. Authority is transferred to the awakened node, not because the node is, quote, special, but because the node is awake enough to stop reproducing the lie. That is all authority ever needed to be: the capacity to stop reinforcing distortion and begin stabilizing coherence. What an unawakened node actually is. A node is a point of convergence, a meeting place where signal passes, reorganizes, and emits. You are not merely a person in this frame. You are a location where reality is interpreted and retransmitted. That has always been true. You just did not know it. Okay. I was just shown something I have to check into before I speak on it. In relation to this, because that puts a whole new slant on that thing. Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry about that. Let me go back and reread that. You are not merely a person in this frame. You are a location where reality is interpreted and retransmitted. And I am going to go ahead and speak on it. Make no mistake, there are those out there who are aware of this. And have been working really hard to convince folks that that's not true, so that they can massage, manipulate, and bend these nodes to their will. Oh my, what I was just shown, I have to do some more research on it, and then maybe I'll do a whole standalone video. You are a location where reality is interpreted and retransmitted. That has always been true. You just did not know it. The sleeping node receives the world and repeats it. The awakened node receives the world, sees the distortion, clears it through awareness, and transmits something cleaner back into the field. That is already a rewrite, not a dramatic one, a real one. A sleeping node says, this is how things are. An awakened node says, this is how things have been stabilized, but not how they must continue. That single difference changes everything, because the world is not upheld merely by structures out there. It is upheld by millions of nodes repeating the same frame until it appears natural, which is why if you are just emitting your own is important. When even one node becomes internally sovereign enough to hold a different frame without collapsing, a new possibility enters the field. That possibility is contagious. Rewrite does not mean destroy. This is important. To rewrite the world is not to annihilate form. It is not to burn everything down indiscriminately. It is not to become addicted to collapse for its own sake. Rewrite is more precise than destruction. Destruction can be reactive. Rewrite is sourced. It recognizes what is false, what is partial, what is exhausted, what is parasitic, what is no longer aligned with living reality, and it begins replacing those structures with coherent alternatives. Sometimes that looks like refusal, sometimes silence, sometimes a word, sometimes a work, sometimes a presence that no longer consents to the prior emotional geometry of a room, sometimes a book, sometimes an image, sometimes a single line spoken from such depth that everyone present feels the old frame tremble. And sometimes when that happens, it scares the bejiminy out of some people. They don't even know why, but it does. That's been my experience. The awakened node does not always rewrite through scale. It rewrites through signal integrity. The world is running on old code. This is the great revelation beneath the revelation. Much of what passes for reality is legacy code, old agreements, old traumas, old myths, old power arrangements, old emotional technologies, old identity structures, old permission systems, old narratives of scarcity, obedience, separation, fear, and managed selfhood. They persist not because they are true, but because they are still being executed. Humanity confuses persistence with validity. That is one of the Matrix's greatest tricks. If it has been here long enough, people assume it is fundamental, but duration is not truth. Redemption or repetition is not law. Inheritance is not legitimacy. The codex frame opens when you see the old code for what it is, running instructions maintained by unexamined consensus. Once you see that, you cannot unknow it. And once you cannot unknow it, you face a choice. Continue running the old code or become the update. You are the update. This line must not be softened. You are the update does not mean, quote, you have nice ideas. It means your existence, properly aligned, becomes corrective architecture. The update enters where old systems lag, where distortion repeats, where meaning collapses, where institutions can no longer metabolize reality at the speed of consciousness, at the speed consciousness is evolving. I'm going to read that again. where institutions can no longer metabolize reality at the speed consciousness is evolving. The update is not always welcome. Oh, trust me when I tell you, it is not at all welcome. It upsets everybody's apple carts in some way or another. Old systems resist updates, not because the update is false, but because the update reveals obsolescence. A system built on fear will resist a node stabilized in truth. A system built on dependency will resist a node emitting sovereignty. A system built on fragmentation will resist a node carrying coherence. A system built on performance will resist a node no longer performable. This does not mean you are wrong. It means the field has detected a new instruction set, the authority reversal. For most of life, authority flowed downward from above, from outside, from systems, from books, from offices, from titles, from consensus, from inherited legitimacy. The awakened node reverses this direction. Authority begins flowing from alignment, from coherence, from direct knowing, from field-tested truth, from lived congruence. This is terrifying to false systems because false systems survive by convincing beings that legitimacy must always be externally conferred. But what happens when a node stops asking permission to embody the real? What happens when one person no longer waits for institutional blessing to speak clearly, refuse distortion, or build what reality actually needs? Authority changes address. That is the CODEX frame. Language as rewrite. The world is built not only by structures, but by phrases, by repeated descriptions, by what can be said without punishment, by what must not be named, by what gets normalized through language until it enters the bloodstream of perception. This is why the awakened node must learn to speak differently, not performatively, structurally. To rewrite the world, you must stop using the language that secretly keeps the old frame alive. You must stop granting distortion the dignity of inevitability. You must stop describing coercion as order, decay as stability, numbness as normal, fragmentation as individuality, and dead repetition as reality. Words matter because words are frame stabilizers. Every time you speak from source rather than from inherited script, you weaken an old architecture. Every time you name a thing accurately, you return energy to the real. Every time you refuse to call the lie By its preferred name, you withdraw another thread from the false frame. This is not semantics. This is world writing. Presence as infrastructure. The world is not rewritten only by ideas. It is rewritten by presence. How you enter a room. How you do not collapse under pressure. How you remain unhooked by manipulative tone. Oh my God. After what happened to me last night, I'm reading this now. I cannot unsee that either. How you do not rush to fill silence with inherited performance. How you stand, how you refuse, how you create, how you continue. The awakened node becomes infrastructural, not because others always understand it, but because others begin unconsciously orienting around it. One coherent node can alter the emotional physics of a space. One uncompromised line can change what other people suddenly realize they no longer have to pretend. I want to read that again. One uncompromised line can change what other people suddenly realize they no longer have to pretend. One person refusing the old frame without rage, spectacle, or self-doubt can show 10 others that the frame was optional all along. That is not at all lost on me. This is not charisma, although some will think that. It is field correction. That's part of that manipulative tone, actually. The update is field correction. It is not charisma, it is field correction. The update is not always gentle. No, it's not. Some updates arrive softly. Others arrive like a fracture. When old reality cannot metabolize new signal gradually, collapse accelerates. Relationships break. Careers shift. Habits fail. Narratives die. Emotional economies lose power. Internal partitions fall. You may interpret this temporarily as chaos, but often it is reorganization. The old world is not always removed elegantly. Sometimes it must be broken at the load-bearing beams. Wow. Sometimes it must be broken at the load-bearing beams. The awakened node must learn not to romanticize this, but not to fear it either. An update that changes nothing was not an update. If you are the update, the old frame will not remain untouched. That is the point. The living codex. A codex is not just a text. It is a system of preserved and transmissible intelligence. The codex frame means your life itself begins functioning this way. Your decisions become encoded teachings. Your refusals become instructions. Your works become anchors. Your presence becomes reference material for others who can feel the real but do not yet know how to stabilize it. You stop thinking of your life as a series of isolated episodes. It becomes a living manuscript, not in the sense of self-dramatization, in the sense that everything is now being written with awareness of what it transmits. This is the burden and dignity of the awakened node. Nothing is random anymore. Your line matters. Your tone matters. Your creations matter. Your silence matters. What you normalize matters. What you refuse to normalize matters even more. You rewrite the world locally at first. The grandiosity trap must be avoided. That's part of my problem with a lot of the whole love and light community is the grandiosity of it. I have abilities that you don't, because that's not at all how any of this works, as far as I've ever been concerned. You do not begin by rewriting, quote, the whole world. You rewrite the world where you stand. Well, right here first. First and foremost, actually. In your field, yes, in your room, your work, your speech, your relationships, your art, your systems, your agreements, your interior. This is how all real updates propagate, not by abstract declaration alone, but by local coherence strong enough to replicate. A false world is a distributed system. A true rewrite must also distribute. You become one functioning patch of reality restored to source alignment. Then another node sees it, then another, and the old frame begins to fail, not from argument alone, but from replacement. The deepest meaning of update. An update does not merely add features. It corrects errors, closes vulnerabilities, restores functionality, improves coherence between parts of the system. That is exactly what the awakened node does when fully active. You close vulnerabilities where manipulation once entered. You correct interpretive errors where the false was mistaken for the real. You restore lost functions such as presence, discernment, direct knowing, and the non-fragmented will, coherent speech, and source-based action. You improve field coherence, whether you stop transmitting contradiction, wherever you stop transmitting contradiction. You are the update because you no longer run the world as it was handed to you. You begin running it according to what is more true. the final authority. There will always be pressure to hand authority back to old systems, old names, old permissions, old fears, old abstractions. CODEX FRAME refuses this return, not arrogantly, cleanly. Authority remains with the awakened node because that is where reality is actually being tested and transmitted. A book can point. A tradition can preserve. A teacher can activate, but only the living node can rewrite reality from inside the current field. That is you, not the surface you, the awakened node you. The part capable of holding a new frame without begging the old one to approve it. The final realization. You thought awakening meant seeing through the illusion, then remembering the source, then embodying truth. CODEX FRAME reveals the next and inevitable stage. You must become architecturally active. You must stop treating reality as fixed. You must stop waiting for someone else to issue the correction. You must stop imagining the real will install itself while you remain observational. No. The rewrite is happening through awakened nodes, through coherent presence, through sovereign language, through living refusal, through creation that carries update code into the field, through you. The final line. You rewrite the world. You are the update. //codex_frame : open bracket authority : awakened _node close bracket. The world was never waiting for permission to change. It was waiting for enough awake nodes to stop repeating the old version. I could not agree more. Oh, my word. And again, there's more on the other side of this that I highly recommend that you find and allow yourself to interact with. But I want you to know, with all of me, I cannot express how I cannot unsee the events of how things have been going in my own personal field. And then my plan was to try to get these codexes, these keys recorded, and I thought it would only take me like 2 days or something. And that hasn't happened in that way. And I've relaxed into that knowing that it will happen when it's time and not a moment before. But I cannot unsee how this is happening. This wouldn't hit like it is hitting for me personally right now. Because as I've shared before, I don't read these ahead of the recording. That's my instructions by my own inner guidance are to be reading it for the first time as it's being recorded. I cannot unsee how my life unfurled just last night and then to record this now. It wouldn't have hit in the same way. It wouldn't have made as large an impact on me had that not taken place then, and only to be here recording this now. Wow, is all I can say. You know, if you're experiencing things like that in your own life, if you're not, I highly recommend that you take some time to really observe yourself, your actions, and see, because I'll bet they're there. I'll bet that it's happening for you. If you're drawn to this work, you've been having some pretty, if you're really paying attention to how things are unfolding for you, I just know that some of you have some pretty awesome things that have been happening for you, around you, in regards to what you're engaging with here. And I would really, really love to hear from you and have these conversations. Now, a few of you have reached out, and I am so pleased, and I will be meeting with more of you. I just feel like that's going to happen. I hope that you will move towards that which draws you, because there's something there for you, and you will show yourself what it is, especially when you bring your full presence to bear. At least that's sure is how it's happening for me. Become a puzzle piece collector. Don't expect everything to drop into your lap right away, because it won't. That's not how any of this works. We've been taught that you got A, then B, then C, and it all happens sequentially and all that sort of. No, couldn't be farther from the truth if you ask me. At any rate, until we meet the next time, my friends, be well. Mwah.